Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon and your weekend's off to a good start. So, Kirk Cousins was, in fact, in Northeast Ohio yesterday. Tony Grossi, on if that means anything relative to the Browns.
The fact that both Cousins and his agent are having fun with this means to me it had nothing to do with football, his visit here. You realize the Browns owner and coach and GM were having dinner at the same time with Abdul Carter in State College while Cousins was here. Cousins hasn't been given permission to seek a trade. He's under contract. He's also told the Falcons, I won't waive my no trade clause until after the draft. And I see which team has a young quarterback or which team, intends to play me. The fact that both Cousins and his agent
very interesting, without question. So Jake Trotter from ESPN Cleveland talking about what he has heard the Browns' plans at number 2 are.
Scout or front office person who thinks that Fedor has a super high ceiling in the NFL. Now, can he bring you a level of competency? Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm not saying Fedor is a bad prospect. I'm not saying he's not a first-round pick.
All right.
He is like the 25th best prospect in this draft. It's not me saying this, okay? It's just everyone I
understand.
Talk to. But I don't know what Jimmy thinks. I don't know what Andrew Barry thinks. And I don't know what Kevin thinks. They may think differently. I'm hearing Abdul Carter's the pick. Because guess what, Chris? I don't care if you have a quarterback or not. You ain't going anywhere next year anyway.
It's because they don't have a quarterback.
No, they have massive holes everywhere else. Running back is a hole. Receivers a hole. Your offensive line is old. You have one defensive lineman at the moment. Your linebacking core has been completely wiped out.
They definitely need some playmakers without question. Again, it'll be interesting to see. Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network talking about what he has heard relative to Shedeur Sanders.
There's 2 options here. He's going to be the second or third pick, right? He's going to go in the top 3 of the draft. If he doesn't go in the top 3, I think there's a very real scenario where he gets outside the top 10. I don't think the Jets will do it. I think the Jets are going to give Justin Fields a little bit of runway here. With where they are as an organization and his age and the upside that you can dream on a little bit there. I don't see them doing it. And then New Orleans is another option, potentially that could be a landing spot there. I just don't know if that's the right fit. Kellen Moore, first year head coach. If that's going to be the ride that he wants to go on right now. I don't know if that's the case. So I think it's the second or third pick. Very possible he could go in the top 3. Outside of that, I think now you start getting some other teams that become into the mix. You start hearing teams like the Rams looking for their, eventual successor to Matthew Stafford. Do they get in the midst? Pittsburgh's hanging out there even with Aaron Rodgers. That's a short-term deal. So maybe they are in the mix there. So I think if we get through the third pick and Shedeur hasn't gone, then I think that's what we're talking about from that point until he gets picked.
Jacob Roach and Garrett Bush will be along a little bit later in the show. We'll talk plenty about Browns. Cavs trying to make it 3 in a row after that West Coast trip, finally back home facing the San Antonio Spurs. And the Cavs got things rolling. Donovan Mitchell gets it inside to Jared Allen for the dunk. This time it's Darius Garland to Allen again. Another dunk. Allen, team high, 29 points, 15 rebounds for the Cavs last night. Donovan Mitchell on the drive, and he gets the dunk. Mitchell had a pretty good game as well, a double-double, this time from outside. Mitchell puts it up, knocks it down, 25 points, 14 assists. The Cavs win their third straight, 124-116. Kenny Atkinson on the impact of Donovan Mitchell in last night's win.
He changed the game because we started out poorly. His stint was not good, his first stint, and that second stint, he came in. They packed the paint. I mean, extreme paint packing, and he started spraying the ball. Around once he got it out of their tight shell, then we started making decisions behind that, and that kind of broke the game out. So his understanding, his reading of the game is elite.
Again, the Cavs, 9 games remaining in the regular season. They have a 5-game lead now on Boston. Chris Fedor will be along. Talk Cavs a little bit later in the show. The Guardians opener in Kansas City. Ben Lively got the start for Tanner Bybee, who had food poisoning. It was scoreless in the 3rd inning, and Ben Lively catches too much of the plate. Vinny Pasquantino with 2 on sends it out into the bullpen in right field. 3-run homer, 3-0 Royals with the lead. It was 3-2 Royals in the 6th. Kyle Manzardo deep to right center. That one lands up in the fountains. And that 2-run blast made it 4-3. Guardians with the lead. Stayed that way until the 9th. Emmanuel Clase in to try to close it out. Runner on 3rd, and Michael Massey hits one out into right field. John Kenzie Noel grabs it, but it scores the game-tying run that will send it to extra innings. Runner starts on second base in the 10th. Stephen Kwan finds the gap in right center. It goes as an RBI double and gives the Guardians a 5-4 lead. A little bit later in that inning, Kyle Manzardo does it again. Down the right field line, it's a fair ball, goes as a 2-run double. 7-4, the Guardians win. Stephen Vogt talked about the game Manzardo had. He had 4 runs batted in.
Kyle had 2 huge hits today, off relievers. And he had an amazing day, really cool day for Kyle. Yeah, I thought, obviously in the first inning we wanted to push one across. And, we got a couple weak contact hits and got a little rally going. Reagan's is good. He's a good pitcher. He's got great stuff and kept us off balance for a majority of the day, but we were fortunate to get his pitch count up early. So our guys have worked hard. Grant Fink and the hitting team have done a great job preparing them, and I feel like we have a good game plan going into the games, especially coming out of spring training. We've been working on these things, those exact type of plays, and Hosey ran it to perfection. Rocchio did as well. I mean, that was well executed, 2 rundowns in 1 play, and we're always looking for the backside runner. We don't quit until the play is completely over. Guys are going to give up runs. They jumped his fastball early, got a couple of hits, and were able to get a sac fly, and then he finished the inning. So our bullpen was outstanding once again. Every single guy that came out was great. That's the hardest part about being a bullpen guy. When you give up runs, everybody asks what's wrong. When you go do your job, no, we don't even talk about them. So our bullpen guys are phenomenal. Clase's the best closer in the league, and it's going to continue to go that way.
So the Guardians, a day off on Friday. Game 2 of the series will be Saturday. It'll be Gavin Williams Saturday. Tanner Bybee, who was scratched from the opener, will pitch in Kansas City on Sunday. We're going to take a quick time out. We welcome in G. Bush talking Browns when Sports4CLE continues. Stay with us.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you and you. If an Ohio lottery scratch-off game has 1 in 4 odds, that means if I were to buy 4 tickets in a row, I'm guaranteed to be a winner. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
Oh, that's false.
You're right, it's false. The jackpot for the Mega Millions is at its highest it's ever been before. I now have worse odds. True or false?
True. False.
False? That is exactly right. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/knowtheodds.
We start by talking Browns. It's the time of year when everybody is talking about pro days. Today it was Jackson Dart, Mississippi quarterback's pro day. Ian Rappaport, NFL Network, this from the Insiders, what he's hearing relative to the draft and Jackson Dart.
Well, we focus so much on number 3 and number 2 and what are the Giants going to do and what are the Browns going to do in the first round. The second round picks get just as interesting, right? Because at 33 or 34, which is what the Giants and Browns have, both those 2 teams can leap up a couple spots or maybe more than a couple spots and maybe snag that 3rd quarterback in the first round, which is why Jackson Dart's pro day tomorrow is so interesting. Jackson Dart has been really impressive. Obviously, you guys know it. The Senior Bowl was really impressive. As one of those who sort of climbed up in that conversation. Maybe he's the 3rd quarterback. I would put Quinn Ewers from Texas also in that conversation. We'll see a couple others. We'll see where it shakes out. But what you might see is one of those teams late in the first round, having traded up, snag one of those quarterbacks. And I know Jackson Dart, as he gets ready for his pro day, has in fact spent extensive time with the Browns, with the Giants and some others who are trying to learn him and trying to figure out where he slots in. Even if those teams don't take a quarterback in one, there is a chance they could leap up and take one a little later in one.
Let's welcome in Garrett Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show as well as the Barbershop. G. Bush, the one thing about Dart, young guy, has played a lot of college football, and he played for Lane Kiffin. So there are some NFL strands in what Lane Kiffin does offensively.
I fully expect him to be a first-round draft pick. I think, we talked about it a couple of months ago. There's a couple of dudes that are going to always automatically slip back into this first round. And this is why I just think that the talk about how this is a bad quarterback class, I actually think that there's going to be 4 quarterbacks. I think Tyler Schluff or Shuck or whoever, we're still trying to figure out who he is and where he came from Louisville. He had 3 injuries, season ending injuries. He's a very interesting process. I talked to Sean King and he feels like he's going to slip into the first round. I think some team's going to be desperate. They're going to jump back in and grab him, but I fully expect Jackson Dart to be somewhere within the late teens to the early 20s. Somebody's going to jump back in and get him because it does you no good to stay at 33 and take him in the second round because everybody wants to get the quarterback that you want and have the 5th-year option. Think of it this way. If he's going to take a little bit of a time to be a project, say, for instance, you got a bridge quarterback and you got somebody who you're looking to start for a year or maybe 2 years. You don't want to put Jackson Dart in a situation where he plays 1 year, he plays very well the next year, then you automatically got to make a decision on him about how much money you're going to give him. Are you going to give him $200 million? This way, you have the 5th-year option for him, and you can franchise him if he's a little bit of a late bloomer. Like you said, he's younger. He can, he's still going to be well within his prime by the time he even gets to his first contract. So it makes no sense. If you are a quarterback hungry team in the second round, it makes all the difference in the world, that extra year control. And you're still going to have him at a nice price where you can also put some pieces and parts around him. So that's why if you're the Cleveland Browns, and you say, you go off script and want Abdul Hunter, say you go off script and get a Travis Hunter, then in Abdul Carter. What you can do then is you can say, all right, well, look, let's go get our quarterback, but let's go ahead and get a little greedy, jump up and get the quarterback, add the 5th year to it, and move up in the first round. I believe 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round in this draft class, and that's why I think people get a little kind of caught up in the whole situation where this isn't a great draft class for this, that, and third. Here's one thing I always know. It's going to be somebody in this draft class that's going to do something. Whether you take them in the top 10 or you take them in the 3rd round, 4th round, that's to be determined. But there is going to be a quarterback given the right tools, given the right system, given the right teams and talent pieces and parts, is going to be successful. It's up to you and your organization to find one.
All right, so today is also the pro day for Penn State. That would be Abdul Carter. Last night, in State College, there was a large contingent of Browns officials, Jimmy Haslam, J.W. Johnson, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, who went out to dinner with him ahead of his pro day today. Earlier this month, Carter was in town, visited the Browns facility, met with team officials as well. Now, there are concerns. He didn't work out at the pro day because he's got the shoulder, he had the foot. So there are some things you gotta figure out. But a lot of people believe that there's the faction within the Browns that wants Abdul Carter. What are you thinking of that if they do that at number 2?
Well, look, I've been beginning as the season gets longer and longer. All fan bases argue back and forth about who they think is best, right? For me, I look at it this way. I always preface it by starting to say Abdul Carter is a bona fide ball player. I'm not going to get up here and act like just because I would advocate going after a quarterback that he is not worthy to pick or that he is some sort of bust waiting to happen. That's not it. The thing that I say about Abdul Carter is a couple of things. There are some things that you love about him, about the way that he can explode off the football, the way he has a lot of bend. Here's the thing. Talking to Greg Cosell, he talks about one of the things that he needs to work on is his converting speed to power. He said a lot of people believe that he is the same prospect as Micah Parsons. He's like, no, he's not the same prospect. They're both crazy athletes, but Michael Parsons is way more powerful, played the position longer, and has more power in converting those rushes to power. And he was better at that coming out. Also, you look at, he's 250. I don't have a problem with him being 250. The reality of it is his best trait isn't going to be standing up tackles and making tackles in the backfield on run plays. That's not what he's going to do. He's only played defensive end for 1 year. Was a stand-up linebacker. What we want to do is he needs to work on being heavy-handed a little more, working with his hands, getting tackles off of him, because those guys are going to be stronger at the next level. For me, it's so intriguing to think about a guy like that, because you already got Mike Hall Jr. and you think that he's one of those twitchy guys and show some progress and show some flashes. You got Myles Garrett. Then you take a look at Isaiah McGuire. You like him when he's come on, and you already thought you had Alex Wright. Now you add a guy like that, it gives you those crazy thoughts in your head about how dominant you could be up front. And I get that, but you can only move that way if you got the quarterback. And if you don't got the quarterback, I trust and believe, people want to say about the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, the Philadelphia Eagles had a nice defensive line. And they've shown the way you can do that when you got linemen up front. But if they don't have Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts is not playing well, and they don't have Saquon Barkley, and they don't have two bona fide receivers, when you talk about A.J. Green and Devontae Smith, those guys are, and not to mention, one of the best lines in the game. So, yes, you can isolate the Philadelphia Eagles and say, look at their D-line, but I could isolate the Philadelphia Eagles and also say they got the best running back in the league, franchise quarterback, check, 2 stud receivers that do different things that complement each other, and an offensive line. At some point, if you're the Cleveland Browns and you want to compete at that level, you got to find the quarterback. For me, I got to find a quarterback, and I can move to another position later on, and that means I'm taking a quarterback at 2.
This is Myles Garrett talking about finding a solution for said quarterback problem. This is from Cleveland Browns Daily.
Any team that's going to go far needs a quarterback, and one that
good one.
That's young, can learn, is willing to be patient with the process, and he's not deterred or discouraged early on. There's going to be some bumps in the road. It's going to be some learning pains, but us as a team, as an organization, has to be able to be a landing pad for him, to fall back on, and being able to be on the defensive side and help him out whenever things go wrong. That's crucial. And that's not just for a young quarterback. That's for veterans and guys who have been here for a while. So as far as quarterbacks, he's laid out a plan on whether it's one from the draft or an older guy. He's kind of laid out something that makes the future look a little bit brighter here, and makes me feel more confident about if someone were to come here, they have some help not only in their room but from some of the veterans.
Yeah, and G-Bush, here's where, and again, I don't have I can't decide, do I want Abdul Carter, do I want a quarterback? And here's where I'm at with a rookie quarterback. You better go get him some playmakers, because right now, we don't have many on that offensive side of the ball. And that's what concerns me about it. Don't set a rookie up to fail.
If you're gonna, so you sound like you are a subscriber to the premium package of Project Stockpile. If you're gonna go ahead and get a quarterback, don't half step. Go ahead and get the quarterback, and actually, for once, put a stamp down and say, we're going all in on this offensive side of the football. You've been watching the Browns longer than me. I mean, how many years are we going to continue to talk about at the end of the year, we need a quarterback and some receivers? We keep doing this, man. We just have. And by the way, we have not invested highly in terms of the trenches. I could go back just off the top of my head, the people that we've invested in the trenches with. We could go back to Courtney Brown, number 1 overall, Gerard Warren, number 3 overall. Jeff Fain was in the 20s, I believe, in 2004, a center. You invested in Cameron Wembley as an edge rusher. You Barkevius Mingo, Danny Shelton, Cam Irving. You've drafted Jed Wills. And we haven't even talked about the people that actually hit, like Myles Garrett and Alex Mack. I thought was a hit for him. And you also talked about Joe Thomas. You have a lot of guys who you've involved in the first round. The Browns have tried to build it through the draft and try to build it in the trenches. Here's the thing. Out of all those years, I can't tell you who's the number 1 receiver. When you compile in a list of the top receivers in the NFL and the top 5 receivers in franchise history, go back and look at the names that come up. Guys like Max Speedy, like guys that have black and white photos. I mean, everybody finds a receiver every once in a while. We've got some guys like Jarvis performed pretty good for a year or so. We've gotten some guys that have come in. Braylon Edwards had a one-off year. Kellen Winslow had 1,000 yards one-off. Guys like that. But we've yet to have. We also know Josh Gordon. We've yet to get a guy where we say, oh, no, the Browns is lethal offense. And even the Bengals, you say what they want about them. The Bengals have even figured it out and said, we might want to go ahead and get T. Higgins and Jamar Chase signed back up. And to get to where the Browns want to go and compete in this division, and speaking of Steelers, talk about what the Steelers have loaded up with. Come on, DK Metcalf, Pickens, they got some guys over there. So we got to, if they're going to come with a quarterback and he's a young one, we need another guy, another tight end, and another receiver to go with Judy. Have to.
And this regime has not picked receivers above the 3rd round. And you go Corey Coleman, Greg Little, and Braylon Edwards. It's not. You gotta get that right. It's past the league, and you need receivers. All right, before we go to break, this is interesting. Charles Robinson, you know him from Yahoo Sports, tweets this out. The Browns are not displeased with quarterback ambiguity right now. There is something going on. Doesn't say what it is, but the sense is they're working, and if you better be working on something that nobody sees, because what we see doesn't look great.
Right now, you have Kenny Pickett, and Kenny Pickett telling people that and Kenny Pickett said, hey, they told me when they brought me in, traded for me, that I was going to get an opportunity to compete. And everybody's looking around like, well, you look at Jameis Winston's off the board. Russell Wilson's off the board. It looked for a second. There was some noise with Carson Wentz, not much anymore. Flacco, we've already had him in the building. I don't know how quickly he's going to be able to sign up and come back and do kind of the bridge stuff again. Kirk Cousins got the $10 million roster bonus, so we don't know what's going on with that. Aaron Rodgers looks like he's probably going to Pittsburgh. All of these things are happening around, and none of these quarterbacks involve the Cleveland Browns. So, look, I don't know, maybe, Kirk Cousins eating Chipotle with something. I don't know what he's doing. I would think that there was a Chipotle somewhere else in the country where he could have been at. Not only was he there, he tweeted twice and was like, hey, I'm going to eat dinner and I'm going to eat lunch in Cleveland. Now, do you find it a little suspicious about this? Watch this now. It just coincidentally, just so they don't get no tampering, no nothing, all of a sudden, hey, we were eating dinner in Happy Valley.
Abdul Carter, we were eating with Abdul.
I had steak. He had the rigatoni. What do you mean? There's no tampering here.
We'll see. They need something. Again, don't care how. Solve the quarterback position. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, plus an interesting comparison done by Christopher Passo, CBS Sports. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Garrett Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, as well as the Barbershop. So Isaiah Steinbach is a former NFL wide receiver on the NFL Network's Good Morning Football. His thoughts about the Browns taking Shedeur Sanders, number 2.
Speaking in regards to the Cleveland Browns, can they afford to pass on Shedeur Sanders? My answer would be no. And the reason being is because they don't have enough at the quarterback position. We all know the situation with Deshaun Watson. All right, they gave him $230 million guaranteed. He went out there, it didn't go great. Then he got injured, and then during rehab, he re-tore his Achilles. So the probability of him playing this year is slim to none. So what do? They go out there, they trade away our guest from yesterday, Dorian Thompson, all right, and they go ahead and they give up a 5th-round pick. So now you lost a 5th-round pick. You have Kenny Pickett on your depth chart, and that is it. Right, so you're going to bring in some guys for camp. You're going to bring in some guys that can go ahead and throw the ball around. But in terms of depth, you don't have any depth at the quarterback position. When you look at trying to rebuild an organization, there is no better quarterback in this year's draft to build an organization around and who has experience to build up organizations that are not doing well than Shedeur Sanders. It's just on his resume. He was at Jackson State, and what did he do? He built that program up, took them from nothing, made them something. He did the recruiting, he played well, all those things, and got them in a winning situation. Then him and his dad go to, obviously, Colorado. And I know you brought this up. I don't know who he is without his dad. It's cool. We're going to find out. He built up Colorado from a non-winning organization and built them up to where they're respectable. So in terms of somebody who has the body of work, Shedeur Sanders is that guy. And on top of that, all you have in Cleveland is Kenny Pickett. And I'm not sure that you feel 100% confident in him being your QB1.
So, G. Bush, here's the way I kind of have, and again, I'm not saying no to Shedeur Sanders. Here's what I would say. If you have Shedeur Sanders ranked top 10, top 15, I can understand reaching for that at 2. If you have him ranked 25, 20, 25, you might be better off looking at that means you're going to have either a Jalen Milroe or a Jackson Dart or a Will Howard ranked close to him. You have to determine, if you're the Browns, what the difference is between where you have Shedeur Sanders ranked and where you have Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter or fill-in-the-blank guy at number 2, and where the second tier of quarterbacks are ranked. That's how you got to do it. Don't fixate in on, we got to get this guy, if you don't have him ranked high enough.
What I would do is I would go, here's the way I probably look at it. I would say, all right, listen, let's look at the group of individuals that weren't graded very highly. If you were to say, all right, let's take a look at, Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts was a 2nd-round pick. If you would have told me Jalen Hurts 4 or 5 years ago would be a Super Bowl champion, I would tell you you're crazy. You look at Jalen Hurts and you say, okay, at Alabama, he got his position taken by Tua, who looked like a better upgrade, a better passer, more efficient, all those things. Tua got drafted eventually inside the top 10. Jalen Hurts had to transfer, went to Oklahoma, had a pretty good year, was in the mix for the Heisman, got drafted in the 2nd round. If you ask yourself and you look at Shedeur Sanders, you say, is Shedeur Sanders a better prospect than Jalen Hurts? You would probably say, yeah, oh yeah, listen, we're much better passer. Like some people would probably say that Shedeur Sanders could be possibly a comparable passer at this point of his career, even though he's never played in the league. And you say, okay, cool. If they're comparable, what was the coach able to get out of them? I think the biggest key that we need to understand and the thing that we need to look at is this. These guys are not finished projects. Nobody is a finished prospect. You take a look at all of them involved, whether it's Drake May or Jaden Daniels or CJ Stroud, all quarterbacks and all these guys are going to have some issues. You look at Bryce Young. Bryce Young came out and struggled, looked better. Anthony Richardson looks like he's struggling. My question is, if you feel he has the talent level and you can get the best out of him, then your evaluation is a little bit different than just saying, all right, well, who's on the board? How does he rank in terms of what was before him or to come after him? Because if you're Kevin Stefanski, you say, okay, I had Deshaun Watson, I had Joe Flacco, and I had Jameis Winston. One of the things that all those guys have really good arms, right? We had Deshaun Watson at one point in time could extend plays. Jameis Winston can throw for 500 yards in a game, and we know what Flacco can do. He has one of the strongest arms that we've seen. But the thing that Kevin Stefanski hates more than anything is turnovers and not being able to hit the guy when the guy is open. And the biggest part of those guys is you saw inaccuracies with Deshaun Watson, turning the football over with Flacco and Jameis Winston. It's even if they are throwing for 400 yards. And the thing that Shedeur Sanders does very well is he does not turn the football over. He is very smart. He is a drop back pocket passer. He is not a dual threat guy. But one thing that he is going to do, he's going to be able to throw the ball to guys, get them open. And at the end of the day, he has played in a pro-style offense, played under Pat Shurmur, and he's played when there hasn't been an offensive line. So the things that we are seeing that he can be really great at, I think he would be great at with Stefanski, which could mitigate some of the things in discrepancies when people say, okay, well, just where do you have him on your big board? Can you take a shot at the guy at number 2 when you have him 15 to 20 on the big board? And I think that's up for Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry to figure out.
All right, so this is done by Chris Trapasso, CBSSports.com, and it's kind of interesting. So it's comparing the top prospects in the draft with former busts. So we always look at the positive comps. This is going, and some of these are scary. So Cam Ward, you have Akili Smith. They say Smith was a transfer into Oregon after 2 years in junior college. Mostly modest statistics as the Ducks starter, burst on the college football scene. NFL draft radar, 30 touchdowns, 7 picks, 6'3", 227. Smith was slightly bigger than Ward, but like Ward, won mostly from inside the pocket, had a flair for the dramatic playoff structure, but only as a last resort. He was out of the league in 2002, so that's the bust comp. Maben, dynamic outside pass rusher at Penn State in a sleek frame, 38-inch vertical, 2009 combine, had a 12-sack, 20-tackle for loss season with the Nittany Lions. Many of his marquee plays came in enormous moments, just like Carter's splash plays. For Sanders, we see it's Kenny Pickett. Older, experienced, mostly accurate, predominantly pocket passer, glimmers of athleticism, just as many retreats in the pocket. That's one sentence from the scouting report on Pickett, and it kind of translates. So again, there's nothing certain in the NFL draft. You're trying to figure out how to make it work.
Listen, and I go back to the statement you made. Most of what you're doing is trying to extrapolate what they did in college and transition and forecast. Is that measurable? Is that going to be something that they're going to be able to do well in the professional ranks? For me, I would put a caveat under all those specific things. If you are Abdul Carter, right? You're never getting single blocked. I don't care how good you are. That's the advantage between being you and Aaron Maben, right? That's the difference between you and Michael Parsons. You're never getting double. It doesn't matter. Myles Garrett is just over there, and you know you're going to be able to capitalize off of that. So, we kind of take a look at that. When you say Travis Hunter, now look, if the reason I kind of don't see that is Morris Claiborne and Jalen Reagor both played and they may play similarities to him, but Jalen Reagor and Morris Claiborne combined as one person is pretty good. Like, you get a starter at corner and you got a starter at receiver. Like, those two guys just play one side of the ball. So I think that comparison is not really correct. And by the way, Travis Hunter's ball skills, he may not be what you would say the twitchiest guy in the world, but the one thing that happens when that ball is in the air, Travis Hunter is going to come down with it, whether he's a DB or receiver. And so you think about Shedeur Sanders, I get that part about, Kenny Pickett had a really nice career pick. He had a really nice senior year. I get what he's saying because it's kind of the, he went in the first round and a lot of people didn't believe that he should have went in that first round. So I think that's the comparison with him. But the one thing about him, Kenny Pickett and Shedeur Sanders is this. Kenny Pickett kind of, wilted under pressure in Pittsburgh. I don't think you're going to see that from Shedeur Sanders. That's one thing you won't have to worry about. He can take a hit. He'll keep getting up. Whatever the media says or writes about him, he'll be ready to go. He's been built under pressure, and anywhere he's gone, he's won. Now, I think mix that with what Kevin Stefanski wants to do, and I always go back and just say, remember this. I mean, when you're running the ball and you're running that play action and guys are walking, he's not going to be asking them to drop back 45 times a game. That's the reason why, and what are you going to do around him? Because I wouldn't mind getting me a nice one of them running backs.
Yep.
And just turning the ball and handing the ball off, too, and minimize these throws as well.
I wouldn't question any of the intangibles with Shedeur Sanders. The only thing I would question are all the measurables. And if you're comfortable with the measurables, he makes a lot of sense.
And I ask you this question. If you get Kirk Cousins, if they landed Kirk Cousins, I'm even more excited about the pick. You know why? Because then I know I ain't got to play him the whole time. You can sit over here and watch Kirk. and at that point in time, you've tried, you're going to do something that we haven't done before, which is, hey, sit and watch. Pull the Patrick Mahomes if he can do it. And we'll see. We'll be yet to see what it's going to be, but it's going to be very interesting. Very interesting. It's going to come down to the wire, and I think the Browns are doing a good job of keeping everybody on the seat of their pants because from week to week, I'm changing just like you. Next week, I might want Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I am right there with you. G. Bush, as always, man, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Appreciate it.
G. Bush, make sure you check him out. Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, Monday through Friday, 11 to 1. You can also catch him Barbershop Saturday mornings. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Jacob Roach, straight ahead. Sports4CLE, be right back. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns. So Kirk Cousins was, in fact, in Northeast Ohio yesterday. He did not meet with the Browns. Remember, we told you earlier, Kevin Stefanski, Jimmy Haslam, Andrew Berry, some of the front office were in State College, Pennsylvania, having dinner with Abdul Carter. 92.3 The Fans, Darrell Ryder did a little digging to find out exactly what Cousins was doing in Northeast Ohio.
From what I was able to gather, he was here to hang out with a friend or two or maybe three that happened to play for the Cleveland Browns. Listen, it is late March in Northeast Ohio. Who does not want to come to the southern shores of Lake Erie in late March to hang out for a day or maybe two? And, I will give Browns fan credit. I said this on the morning show with Anthony Lima. I'm going to give Browns fan credit. They rolled out the orange and brown carpet. If it was a personal fact-finding mission for him, and I'm not saying it was, I know the Browns are not allowed to talk to him. That would be tampering.
With that, let's welcome in Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. So, just hanging out with friends who happen to play with the Browns.
It was really funny because it went from this thing where we're like, oh, that could be any Chipotle. We don't know that that's in Westlake, to, oh my goodness, no, he actually was definitely here in multiple different locations. I heard Jack Conklin's name mentioned as who he may have been here to visit. But yeah, Daryl brings up a great point. Just like who's just, popping up to Lake Erie in the middle of March, just curiously a month before the draft. I think it's really interesting because there'd been some rumors that he wasn't necessarily interested in coming to Cleveland and waiving his no trade clause. We know he doesn't want to be in a spot like he was last year, where the team that he is the starting quarterback for takes a top 10 quarterback. So that's very interesting because there's a lot of rumors that the Browns could still go quarterback at number 2, and we know Cousins doesn't want to be in that situation. But I'm just impressed with Browns fans because they were on this before anybody else was, and there was like the agents and Ian Rappaport had to jump all over it. It was very interesting.
I know you've answered this in your mailbag. What do you think the farthest you'd move back from pick number 2 in a trade down if the team really wants Shedeur, Carter, or Hunter?
I really don't want to go really past 7 with the Jets. I think that's kind of because in theory you're thinking if you're trading back, that means Cam Ward probably went number 1 overall. Rather, that was the Giants or the Titans, stood pat and they took him there. There are only a handful of blue chip players in this draft for me. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham are some of them. I don't want to go too far back to where I'm going to miss out on one of those guys, which likely means 5 or 6 is the ideal range, just because you're going to think 2 quarterbacks are going to go. If there's a trade up scenario, maybe a third. There's a lot of rumors Jackson Dart may go a lot sooner than we think. But I'm trying to get a blue chip player. Now, I'm a very big Armand Membu fan, the right tackle from Missouri. So if you go back to 7, I think you can still get a guy like that. But, Carter, Hunter, Mason Graham, Membu, I got to get my hands on one of those players. I really can't do that if I go past 7.
And to be honest, if it's one of those 3, you might not be able to go past 3. Those may very well be the 3 top players drafted in this draft.
Yep.
So if the Browns do trade back and Will Campbell, how much difference is there between Campbell and Connerly or any of the other top? We're talking offensive tackles at that point.
Yeah, so for me, Will Campbell comes in as a guard. He projects as a guard in the NFL for me. That's kind of the consensus nationally amongst draft people. There are still some people that believe he can play tackle. He's got those 33-inch arms, and a lot of people are like, oh, you just want to throw him in guard because of the arm length. It's not just that. He really struggles to give up his outside shoulder on some of those speed rushers, and he just can't get there, that range. He's got a really awkward upright motion. Upright stance that he gets into in pass protection. And it just feels like he may need to kick inside to guard. So personally, I would consider him. I mean, I think he's the best offensive lineman in this class, but he's a guard to me. Membu is my number 1 tackle. Josh Connerly is my number 3 tackle. But if we're being honest, all 3 of those guys, plus Kelvin Banks is my number 2 tackle, they're all first-round grades for me. So I don't see a massive drop-off from like Will Campbell to Josh Connerly, which I think you can get a little bit later in the first round, or maybe you trade up from 33 if you want to get like a Josh Connerly or something like that. So for me, if I'm trading back, it's looking at a guy like Armand Membu, but he's a right tackle. If you're looking to trade back and take a left tackle, the top-rated left tackle on my board is Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas.
All right, so if the Browns don't take a quarterback at number 2, and we'll get to your mock draft, your most recent one here in a minute, what's the next most realistic round or possibility that they do take a quarterback?
Now, I don't have any inside information in terms of this particular statement I'm about to make, and that is just, I feel like it revolves around pick 33. I don't necessarily think it's going to be pick 33. I think it could be a trade-up situation, and I, of course, we'll talk about that with the mock draft, but I think somewhere around there, I don't think they're going to mess around and try to get cute and be like, well, maybe I can get Will Howard at 67 or Kyle McCord at 94 or something like that. I think right now, Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson are the only ones on the board. If you're not going to take one at 2, and I understand that, I'd rather take Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter because if Cam Ward's off the board, because I don't have any other quarterbacks rated that high. But getting somebody in the 20s or at 33, like Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, one of those particular players, that's just in my gut feeling on how I think this thing is going to play out.
So, relative to how you have them rated, where do you have Sanders? Where do you have Dart? Where do you have obviously, Ward's number 1. How close are those next group of guys with what you've done rating-wise?
So I got Sanders at 24 right now. I'm getting ready to update my big board. It'll come an updated top 150. I've only got a top 100 out, but I'm going to push it to a top 150. That'll come out for the OBR probably next week, hopefully, if I can get the time to get that knocked out. Sanders is in the 20s. Milroe checks in the low 50s, and then Dart and Howard are there in the 60s. But the thing to keep in mind for me, looking at this, I was talking to somebody on the OBR forum the other day about this. There's not a lot of star power at the top of this board, but the middle group of this group, like picks, like rounds 2 through 5 and like picks 2 through 8, or I'm sorry, 20 through 80, those prospects are not separated by that much. Like if you were on a grading scale, you might have pick 20 at like an 80, and then pick 80 might actually be at like a 71. It's not, this is a very depth oriented class. So once you get past that first group, I do not have Sanders, and I have Sanders, Milroe, Howard, Dart, and they are not separated by that much at all. I don't see them very much differently. I all see them as kind of day 2 guys on my board.
All right, so here's the latest mock draft, and we start with a couple of trades that you have to set things up. So you have the Browns trading back from 2 to 7. They give up 2 and 179 for 7, 42, 110, and a first-round pick. So need a first-round pick of the Jets in 2026. Then you have the Browns trading picks, 33, 94, and 200 to move up 9 spots to get pick 24 from the Vikings. Now, we'll take a look at the entirety of it, and let's talk about the first 4 in here. The tackle from Missouri that you really like. Then you have Browns taking Jackson Dart. We know they've done a lot of work with him. Quinshawn Junkins, one of those picks at 42 that they got in the trade. And then Jalen Royals, wide receiver. So tackle, all offensive, tackle, quarterback, running back, wide receiver to kind of address some of the skill position needs. Tell me what you like about those first 4, each of them.
Armand Mimbu is probably I think the most physically talented tackle in this class. I do think he needs a little bit of time. I think he's a really smart player. He moves really well. I like what he does with his hands. Some of his footwork and some things like that kind of needs cleaned up a little bit, and he's a right tackle. So in this situation, I think he could move to left tackle. He's got the athleticism. He's got the size. He's got the power. I think he can move to left tackle if you want to do that. I think it would be great to sit him over there behind Jack Conklin for a year or so and let him kind of mature and grow and learn from Conklin, who's kind of like a technician and really has been around and been a multi-time All-Pro, and set you up for, as soon as Conklin leaves, calls it quits, you're pretty locked down at that right tackle spot with Armand Mimbu. Then with Jackson Dart's someone I'm lower on than kind of the consensus. I've had him lower on my board. He's quarterback 5. I think I have him 69 overall on my big board right now. And I'm a little bit lower on him just because I think I have some questions about him reading defenses and being able to make NFL decisions and diagnose defenses, because he was in an offense that was very basic and simple and kind of like very quarterback friendly. We always say it's like Lane Kiffin was holding his quarterback's hand. So I just haven't seen him go through some more complex reads and things like that. But physically, Jackson Dart has absolutely everything you want in a quarterback. He's got the size. He's a really good athlete. He's got a nice arm. It's not the biggest arm in the class, but it's up there. He will push the ball vertically. And the thing that you like the most is he mixes those two things together to escape, create. He can create with his legs. He will run. He will pick up yardage on the ground, but he is looking to throw first, and he's got the arm to be able to do that, to throw the ball on the run the way that you've got to have a little bit of extra arm strength to be able to do some of those things. And so with Jackson Dart, I think he needs time. I think he needs a year or two. He's still only 21 years old, which is, you look at the numbers. He's played 4 years in college. He started at USC and then the last 3 there at Ole Miss. And he's still only 21 years old. And it's interesting when you look at those numbers, but he just needs some time to grow and develop. But physically, he's got absolutely everything. And then when you look at Quinshon Judkins, that's a do-it-all running back for me, man. Like, he added 20 pounds. Like, this is the craziest thing. He added 20 pounds from going from Ole Miss to Ohio State. The things he was doing at Ole Miss, he was doing at like 200 pounds. And then at Ohio State, he puts on 20 pounds and he says, not only am I going to be incredibly explosive and elusive in the open field, but I'm going to steal your soul and run you over with power. And I'm just going to embarrass you. And he did that routinely with Ohio State. He reminded us at the Combine just how explosive he was, because we were all, the role he was kind of regulated with Ohio State. Travion was the explosive one. He was the power back. He reminded us at the Combine, I'm a 4'4" guy too. I'm a very freaky athlete at 220 pounds. Look at all these crazy things I can do. And I think putting him there, he's your running back. You feel great, fantastic. Bring Nick Chubb back. Nick Chubb, Quinshon Judkins, with Jerome Ford, love it. Absolutely love it. Jalen Royals on the other side, the wide receiver. I just want some more speed, some more explosiveness. He's a more dynamic player, a 4-4 speed kind of guy. I just really love what Jalen Royals does with the ball in his hands in the open field. Kind of reminds me of a guy I really like earlier in the draft, Luther Burden, the Missouri wide receiver, where these are guys that you get the ball in their hands in space and you just let them do what they do and they pick up extra yardage.
Yeah, and the thing that I like, they need to address offensive playmakers, especially if you're going to have a young or a veteran quarterback who isn't really elite. You need some guys like Judkins, Royals, Henderson, fill in the blank. You need wide receivers and running backs that are playmakers.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, we're sitting here now thinking that, like, you're potentially starting a guy like Carson Wentz or Joe Flacco. I know those are two names that they've been heavily connected to. And it's just like, both of those guys are not, Joe Flacco's a couple years older. He's in his 40s. Carson Wentz, the last time he was a starter in Washington, it did not look good. So yeah, you're right. Find these players that can create it. I titled the mock draft Getting More Explosive in 2025. And that was all based around protecting the quarterback, opening rushing lanes for these running backs to do some things. I really love the idea of them doubling down and taking 2 running backs, getting like a Judkins who's like power and speed, or you can get a power back early, speed back late, or flip-flop it, something of that nature, and just finding someone else that can stretch the field vertically and really help take the pressure off Jerry Jeudy. Because you got Cedric Tillman, I think, he took a step forward this year. And the David Njoku that can do some of those things. But especially if you're getting a rookie quarterback, we talked about this with Baker Mayfield. It was like, well, Baker's got to get a better offensive line, because when he first got here, it wasn't that great. So we got to get him an offensive line. We got to get him weapons. And my thing is, if you're not going to take a quarterback at 2, if you're kind of concerned about this class, well, build around the position. And then whoever is in the position will have an easier job, because they're able to get the ball out in space to these playmakers who can then make up for some of the deficiencies that the quarterback position has.
Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report is always great stuff. Appreciate the time, the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, also co-host of Barking Browns podcast. For this episode, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Cavs. Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you. And you, sir, what's your name? Where are you from?
Tom Burrell from Lexington, Ohio.
I'm playing Powerball. I use AutoPick when I pick my numbers. Do I have better, worse, or the same odds?
Same odds. I'd say better. I still think worse. Same odds.
He's got it. It's the same. AutoPick, numbers you pick, same odds. Either way, he has it. He has it, folks. He already knows. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/knowtheodds.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers, won their third straight, beating the Spurs last night. So with 9 left, they're up 5 on the Celtics. Let's welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Chris, long road trip, finally back home. What did the Cavs want to see from themselves the final 9 games heading into that playoff run?
I just think their primary goal at this point in time, Dave, is to be healthy and be in a great position physically and mentally going into the postseason. I think Kenny Atkinson understood part of the reason why the Cavs were not able to have the kind of playoff run that they wanted to have last year. Even though he wasn't here, he learned these things when he took the job, going through the interview process, something that Kobe Altman and Mike Gansey and the front office people talked to Kenny about during the interview process was just, hey, like, we didn't feel like we had an opportunity to give Boston our best shot in the playoffs because Donovan Mitchell didn't play the final 2 games and he was dragging his leg around, because Karis LeVert was dealing with an injury, because Jarrett Allen wasn't there. So they said, if you have an opportunity down the stretch, try and get these guys into the playoffs in the best physical and mental condition as possible. And you've seen Kenny do that since day one. There has been a big picture plan in place, Dave, to get Donovan Mitchell specifically into the playoffs in a different kind of condition. That's why they've been adamant about keeping his minutes down. That's why they've been adamant about not running him into the ground during the regular season and finding different opportunities when the schedule allows itself to get him rest nights or injury maintenance days. And you're going to continue to see that for the Cavs over the final 9 games. There's going to be some with Ty Jerome where he gets some time off. There's going to be some with Max Strus where he gets some time off. There's going to be some with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. I think the only one who probably won't is Jarrett Allen, because he has a personal goal to play all 82 games. And I think Kenny is going to respect that, and he is going to honor that for Jarrett. But the Cavs understand that for them to be the team that they want to be in the playoffs and have a real shot at beating Boston 4 times in 7 tries, they've got to be in a different kind of condition than what they were last year.
Are there any major health concerns as you sit now, and it's still a little bit before the playoff run?
Yeah, at this point in time, the only thing that they're really monitoring is Donovan Mitchell's groin, but it's nothing severe. It's nothing significant. It's not the situation that the Cavs were in last year, where Donovan had to be shut down toward the end of the regular season and get a PRP injection in his knee. That was something that was significant for the Cavs that they had to deal with. They were dealing with the injury to Dean Wade. That was a significant injury, and there was no clarity on whether he was going to be available going into the postseason. So for the Cavs, there are some minor things. Max Strus has been icing his pinky. He's been wearing a wrap around his pinky on his non-shooting hand for the last, I'd say, week and a half or so. And that's something that I guess you have to monitor slightly. And then Jarrett Allen obviously still has that finger issue that bothers him every now and then, but that one's getting better and better as the season has gone on. And like I said, Donovan with his groin. But aside from that, there is nothing substantial that the Cavs are worried about to this point in time going into the postseason.
So I know you wrote an article about this one. How did the Cavs keep from overreacting to that stretch where they just didn't play well out west?
I think that was a big deal, Dave. That was their biggest adversity that they had seen throughout the course of the season. It sounds crazy to say that because it was only a 4-game losing streak, but that shows the level of consistency that they've played at throughout the course of this year. And it shows a standard that they've set for themselves throughout the course of the year that, 4 games in a row was something that bothered them. They didn't like that they were dealing with that level of adversity. They didn't like that they were losing games in the fashion that they were losing them. But I think there was an understanding of, we have already accomplished so much throughout the course of this regular season, and we are the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. For us to panic over that, for us to overreact to that, that wouldn't be who we are. In the face of adversity, Kenny Atkinson always says this, in the face of adversity, you have to stay true to yourself. You have to stay true to the things that made you the team that you have become. And the Cavs have been this loose team. They've brought a fun, joyous environment. They do these things before practices and sometimes on off days where it's football games or it's pickleball or it's wiffle ball home run derby or it's just various things to kind of break from the monotony of an 82 game regular season grind. And I think Kenny Atkinson recognized during the road trip that a lot of guys were exhausted. A lot of guys just wanted to be home. A lot of guys weren't really having a lot of fun. So instead of coming off the loss against Phoenix and saying to themselves, hey, we're going to have a really long, rigorous practice. We're going to have a 20 to 30 minute film session where we just talk through all of our flaws and all of our weaknesses that have shown up during this road trip. Kenny Atkinson said, that wouldn't be us. That's not what we've done all year. That's not how we've gotten to the point that we've gotten to. And it's not to say that the Cavs don't take things seriously, and it's not to say that they don't have a business-like approach when it comes to game day. They do, but they understand how to mix in fun as well to break from all those other things that could bring you down. So instead of like doing that some teams probably would do in a panic state, saying, oh my God, we've got all these flaws that are being exposed. We've got all this slippage that we're having defensively. Kenny Atkinson said, scrap that. We're not going to do that. We're going to play horse. We're going to have fun. And you saw in the final 2 games of the road trip, the Cavs having fun. You saw the smiles come back. You saw the celebrations, sometimes the over-the-top celebrations when they were playing against Utah and Portland. And that looked more like the Cavs. So I just think, staying true to yourself and your beliefs and what got you to the point that you had already gotten to, I think that was a very, very important moment for Kenny Atkinson.
You also wrote an article about Darius Garland and the kind of year he's had and the player. Take us through that and what you've seen from Garland night in and night out.
It's just a different level of consistency, Dave, and it's a different level of approach, I would say, from Darius. He was a young player that went through something really, really difficult last year, both on the court and off the court. The fractured jaw was one thing. It was 6 weeks on the sidelines. It was a month straight of an all liquid diet. He lost a lot of weight. He just wasn't in a good place from a mental standpoint, and he wasn't in a good place from a physical standpoint. And then on top of that, he lost his grandmother, who was the last remaining grandma. And as you see this year, Darius, every time he makes a three, he does the 3 fingers and he blows a kiss to the sky. That's for his grandmother. He was very, very close to his grandmother. His grandmother was there when he was drafted 5th overall in 2019. She was part of the Darius Garland contingent that was there in New York to celebrate that moment. She always used to give him kisses. They're a very, very close family. They're a very loving family. And he didn't have an opportunity to grieve that loss. Like, he left the team on off days to go back to Gary, Indiana, and try and support his parents and try and grieve with them and help them through that significant personal loss. But he didn't really have the opportunity that a normal person would, because games kept coming and practices kept coming. So I think, going through all of that last year, it kind of opened Darius's eyes a little bit, and it forced him to kind of change a little bit and grow up and learn how to deal with adversity. And his habits are different this year. The professionalism from Darius is different this year. The basketball level maturity is different from Darius this year. And I think all of that is partially tied to what he went through last year, what he calls the most difficult year of his entire life, not just, his career, but his entire life as a person. So going through all of that, I think, provided him with a different kind of perspective. And then on top of that, you had a fan base that basically turned on him and gave up on him. And there were comments about, oh, he's overpaid. Oh, he's overrated. Oh, him and Donovan don't work together and Darius needs to be traded and all that kind of stuff. And you're talking about somebody who was the franchise face, somebody who was a cornerstone piece of this entire rebuild. And to have like that level of criticism thrown at him, he was like, all right, bleep that. I'm going to show everybody. He has called this his revenge season. And he's taken that approach, that kind of chip on your shoulder approach. I'm going to prove you right. And I'm going to prove all the people close to me that I can be this kind of guy still for this organization, the people in the organization that decided not to trade me, the people in the organization that decided to be on my side, the teammates that I have, I'm going to prove them right. I'm going to show that, yeah, I can still be that guy for them, for this organization, for this new coaching staff, for all of these people that have been believing in me since day one. And you just see that kind of approach from Darius on a day-to-day basis. And the other thing that you see from him is just having fun, getting back to the joy of playing the game of basketball. And, you know, when Darius is playing like that, and he's bringing that kind of joy and that kind of flair to the team, it's infectious. It trickles down to Evan Mobley. It trickles down to Jared Allen. It trickles down to Ty Jerome coming off the bench. And that's a big part of why the Cavs are the team that they are, is because of the fun and the joy that they play with. And Darius is a big part of that.
The other thing that you notice with Kenny Atkinson, he's played 9, 10, sometimes 11 guys pretty consistently. Now, the rotations shrink during the playoffs, but the fact that you have given so many guys so many minutes, I would think it gives you more options come playoff time when you have matchups.
That is the biggest thing about it, Dave, is that there are more playable options for Kenny Atkinson to go to. And, you know, I don't want to go back in the Wayback Machine or anything along those lines, but it's a very different team and it's a very different situation than what JB Bickerstaff had to deal with. You know, part of the reason why JB Bickerstaff played such a shortened rotation is because he didn't believe that he had guys that had earned it. He didn't have the same level of trust and the same level of belief in the certain guys because they weren't playing to that level. If you go back to 2 years ago in the series against the Knicks, and I know it was 2 years ago and this team has evolved and everything about this organization has evolved, but just to put it in perspective, the guys that he was going to off the bench, Jetty Osman is overseas. Lamar Stevens missed like half of the year because he couldn't find a team to play for in the NBA before he finally latched on with the Memphis Grizzlies. Ricky Rubio is retired. Danny Green is podcasting and retired. So like when you don't feel like you have the kinds of options, it makes it harder to put that trust in that bench and a deeper rotation. You know, Kenny Atkinson has all these different guys that have all stepped up at various moments throughout the course of the regular season that have earned the playing time, that have shown Kenny, hey, I deserve a spot in this rotation. When you call my name, I can be somebody that you can rely on. So because the guys have stepped up throughout the course of the regular season, you know, Kenny knows when the playoffs roll around, I can go to Javonte Green and feel pretty good about what he's going to give me. I can go to Sam Merrill and feel pretty good about what he's going to give me. Like if my point guards are in foul trouble or somebody's dealing with an injury, I can go to Craig Porter Jr. Maybe it's a lot because he's a second-year player and it's the playoffs, but he has shown enough throughout the course of this regular season that I can go to him as well. And that's the big thing that Kenny has. It's not a situation where, you know, he's sitting there saying to himself, oh my God, like what kind of playable minutes am I going to get off the bench? Like if Donovan Mitchell is in foul trouble, what am I going to do? If Max Strus isn't making shots and bringing it on the offensive end of the floor and he's getting attacked on the defensive end of the floor, who do I go to? Like who can I trust? Now there are different answers to those questions. So if the Cavs need a defensive-minded lineup, they have guys that they can do that with. If they need an offensive-minded lineup, they have enough guys that they can do that with. If they want to play big, they can do that. They could put Dean Wade at the 3 and play the 2 bigs at the 4 and the 5. If they want to play small, they can do that as well. They can play Dean at the 5. They can play DeAndre at the 4. They can play Isaac Okoro at the 3. And every single time that Kenny goes to one of these lineups, it's not like this either or proposition. It's, I feel I'm getting enough at both ends of the floor from these guys. I feel like I'm not losing that much with these guys coming off the bench, and I'm still getting a level of production. I'm getting a level of stability. I'm getting a level of consistency. And it's going to be tough when he gets into the playoffs and he's got to shorten the rotation and tell some of these guys, hey, your minutes are going to get cut, your touches are going to get cut, or you're not going to play in a series. Like, that's tough. But when you have these guys that have bought into the bigger picture, it becomes a lot easier for somebody like Kenny.
Right, and the other thing is those matchups are how you win series that are close, too.
Absolutely. You know this, Dave. You know, when you go through a playoff series,
yep,
Orlando's not Indiana, right? You know, Boston is not built like the Chicago Bulls. Every series is going to call for something different or someone different, and that person just has to be ready to step up in that given matchup, in that given series. And I think these guys have an understanding of that, and that's really, really important.
Chris Fedor, as always, great stuff. Appreciate you joining us. Thanks very much, Chris.
You got it, Dave. Anytime, man.
Chris Fedor, make sure you check him out. Great Cavs coverage. He is the Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Should be a fun end of the regular season and playoffs for the Cavs. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Have a great weekend. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock on Sports for CLE.